My name is Carter, and I'm 28 years old. If you ask my parents, they'd probably say I've always been too independent for my own good. That's code for I don't ask them for anything. I don't rely on anyone. And maybe, just maybe, I've stopped letting them use me. I have a stable job, my own apartment in Denver, and a life I built from scratch. Meanwhile, my older brother Jason, he's 32, has built nothing. Nothing except a long, winding trail of excuses and unpaid bills. The guy has a PhD in blaming everyone else for his mess. If you gave Jason a golden opportunity, he'd somehow manage to turn it into an overdue electric bill. Lost a job. His boss was out to get him. Failed a lease. The landlord didn't respect his artistic boundaries. No savings. The world is just too unfair. He's the kind of guy who reads one motivational quote and thinks it qualifies him to launch a startup. Spoiler, he's on his 5th failed one. Growing up, I learned quickly that saying no to my parents meant being labeled cold or worse, selfish. But saying yes meant cleaning up someone else's disaster. Usually, Jason's. I tried the people-pleaser route for a few years. I lent money. I let him crash on my couch once, never again. And each time, it took a chunk out of me. So I stopped. I drew a line and stuck to it. At least I thought I did. The day it all came crashing down started innocently enough, a Sunday dinner at my parents' house. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, a heavy smell of manipulation in the air. I should have turned around when I saw Jason's beat-up Honda in the driveway. He greeted me at the door with a grin I hadn't seen since he borrowed my laptop and forgot to return it for 6 months. Carter, look who decided to show up. My mom chirped, her voice a little too high-pitched, like she was bracing for something. I gave a cautious nod. Just came for the food. We sat down. My dad offered me a drink, which he never does unless he's about to ask for something. Jason was unusually quiet, pushing food around his plate like a child forced to eat vegetables. I knew something was off, but I wasn't ready for what came next. Halfway through dinner, right as I was reaching for the gravy, my mom cleared her throat. Then she folded her hands and said, "Carter, we need to talk about something important." Uh-oh. You know, Jason's been going through a tough time. Here we go. And we all agree it would be best if he stayed with you for a few months, just until he gets back on his feet. I froze. Just like that, no warning, no request, just a matter-of-fact announcement like she was telling me we were out of milk. I set my fork down, slowly, carefully. My eyes scanned the table. My dad avoided my gaze. Jason looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. My mom smiled at me, hopeful, like she'd just given me a gift. "No," I said. "One word, that's all." Her face dropped. "Carter, don't be like this. You have space, and Jason just needs—" "He's not moving in with me," I said again, louder this time. Jason spoke up, trying to play the wounded artist. "It's just temporary, man. I just need a reset." "You've needed a reset for the last 10 years, I snapped. My dad tried to mediate. "Come on, Carter, we're a family. We help each other." "No, we enable Jason, and I'm done doing that." There it was, my line in the sand. My mom went quiet for a second. Then she pulled the guilt card. "After everything we've done for you." I stared at her. "What exactly have you done for me?" Silence. Jason stood up and stormed out of the room, muttering something about betrayal. My mom followed, trying to comfort him. My dad stayed seated, sipping his drink as if the awkwardness wasn't thick enough to choke on. I left before dessert. On my drive home, I replayed the scene in my head, wondering if I'd overreacted. But no, this had been coming for years. I just finally said what I should have said ages ago. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, I got a call at work from my building manager. Apparently, someone had shown up at my apartment claiming to be my future roommate and tried to move in. You guessed it, Jason. He'd shown up with boxes, bags, and the sheer audacity to act like this was all settled. I rushed home to find my landlord furious, Jason confused, and a moving truck idling outside like this was some kind of sitcom. "What are you doing?" I asked him. "You said no, but I figured you just needed time to cool off." Jason shrugged. "Mom said you'd come around." I laughed. It wasn't funny, but I laughed anyway. "Put everything back in the truck," I said. "You're not staying here." He looked at me like I had kicked a puppy. Seriously? Dead serious. He started arguing, yelling, drawing the attention of a few neighbors. It got so bad, the building manager threatened to call the cops if he didn't leave. That night, my phone blew up with calls from my parents. How could you embarrass your brother like that? Don't you care about family? You've changed. They were right. I had changed. But I wasn't the villain in this story, and I wasn't about to let them rewrite it. The calls didn't stop for 3 days. Missed calls, voicemails, texts that started off passive-aggressive, then quickly turned into straight-up manipulation. My mom even sent me a photo of Jason sitting on a box in their living room, looking sad and defeated. The caption, "This isn't the brother I raised you to ignore." I didn't respond. You'd think that would be the end of it, that they'd accept my decision. But no. That would have required boundaries, and boundaries didn't exist in my family. Not for Jason. Especially not when he could be someone else's problem. So I wasn't surprised when my dad showed up at my work. Yeah, my actual job. He waited in the parking lot like some kind of intervention stalker. "Dad," I said when I saw him leaning against his car. "Can we talk?" I was exhausted from a 10-hour shift and in no mood for theatrics, but I figured if I gave him 5 minutes, maybe he'd back off. We sat in the front seat of his car. He didn't start with small talk. He went straight for the jugular. "Your mother's worried sick. Jason's not doing well. He's really struggling." "He's always struggling," I replied, not unkindly. "But it's never because of anything he does. It's always someone else's fault. I'm done carrying that." He sighed like he was the victim. "We're not asking for much. Just a few months. He needs a place to reset. He's your brother Carter." "Dad," I said, keeping my tone level. "You want him to live with me because you don't want to deal with him. Let's not pretend this is about some noble sacrifice. You're tired? You're frustrated. You just want to pass the headache to me." He didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned forward and said something I wasn't expecting. "If you don't help him, we're cutting you off." I blinked. "Cutting me off from what I've never asked you for anything. You won't be welcome at the house anymore," he clarified. "Holidays, birthdays, family events. If you can't be there for Jason, you're not part of this family." Ah, there it was. The ultimatum. I smiled. Not a joyful one, a tight, tired smile. The kind you give when someone finally says the quiet part out loud. "Thanks for clarifying," I said, opening the door. Now I know exactly where I stand. He didn't call after me, just sat there arms crossed, staring straight ahead. That night, I called my friend Marcus and told him the whole story. He didn't say much at first, just let me vent. Then he said something I'll never forget. "You've been playing the role they wrote for you your whole life. But what happens when you walk off the stage?" That line hit me like a brick, because he was right. My family had cast me as the reliable one, the fixer, the guy who always showed up even when no one else did. And I played that part so well they forgot I had a life of my own. Dreams, limits, anger. But not anymore. I needed to do something drastic. Not out of revenge, but clarity. They needed to see the boundaries I'd drawn and realize I wasn't bluffing. So I made a plan. It started with a lock change, then a new security camera installed above my apartment door. Then I called my landlord and formally documented that no one was to be let in without my written permission. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being prepared. Jason had a history of pushing until something snapped. I wasn't going to give him that chance. Sure enough, 4 days later, he tried again. This time, he brought back up my mother. They showed up at 8 a.m., knocking like the apartment was on fire. I watched them from my living room window. Jason was holding 2 duffel bags. My mom was holding what looked like a casserole dish. Because apparently baked ziti fixes betrayal, I didn't answer the door. They knocked again, harder this time. Then my mom called. I let it ring. Jason started yelling through the door. "Carter, open up. Don't be like this. We talked about it." We hadn't. Then my mom chimed in. "We brought you dinner. Just let us in and we can talk. It doesn't have to be like this." It didn't. But they made it like this. I stood in my kitchen phone in hand, staring at the door. I could hear Jason's voice starting to crack. My mom switching from sweet to angry, demanding answers. The moment felt surreal. Like a bad play where no one knew their lines but kept shouting anyway. Then I did something I hadn't done since I was a teenager. I screamed. Not a yell of rage, but a full-on scream into a pillow. Everything, every emotion I'd stuffed down over the years boiled up and burst out. And when I was done, I sat on the couch, chest heaving, tears stinging my eyes. I wasn't crying for them. I was crying because it hurt to cut off people you once loved, even when they deserved it. Eventually, they left. Later that night, I got a text from Jason. "You're dead to me." It didn't sting the way I thought it would. It felt like freedom. That night, I slept deeper than I had in months. But the story didn't end there. The next day, I woke up to a post on Facebook. My mom had written a long, tear-soaked status about sons who abandon family and the pain of being betrayed by your own blood. It had over 50 comments, mostly from her church friends. The guilt machine had gone public. I didn't comment. I didn't message her, but I screenshotted everything. Because this wasn't a family rift anymore. It was a war, and I had just taken the first shot. The post stayed up for 3 days. 3 full days of being publicly dragged by my own mother. The comments were a parade of fake concern and moral judgment. "Praying for you, sweetie. How could he do this to you? God sees your pain." They didn't know me. They didn't know what Jason had done or what my parents had enabled for years. They just saw a woman who cried on Facebook and assumed her son must be the villain. It would have been funny if it weren't so infuriating. On day 4, the post was deleted. No apology, no retraction, just gone like it never happened. That was their style, rewrite the story when it got too inconvenient. But what came next that wasn't just inconvenient? It was a full-blown invasion. It started with a knock at the door again. Only this time I wasn't home. My downstairs neighbor, Rita, a retired nurse with the sharp instincts of a hawk, texted me. "Hey, hun, your family's back. 2 men and a woman. Tried to open your door. I asked if they were supposed to be here. They said yes." I felt my stomach drop. I opened the security app on my phone. There they were, Jason, my mom, and some guy I didn't recognize. Jason was trying to jiggle the doorknob while the stranger stood behind them holding what looked like a toolbox. Were they really about to break in? I called Rita. She picked up immediately. "They told me they had permission," she said, voice calm but alert. I told them I was calling the cops if they didn't leave in 2 minutes. They left, but they didn't look happy about it. I thanked her and drove home heart-pounding the entire way. When I got there, nothing looked touched, but the air felt off, like someone had crossed an invisible line. I double-checked the locks, the cameras, everything, and that's when I made my decision. No more warnings, no more soft boundaries. I drove straight to the police station. I filed a formal report not just for attempted trespassing, but for harassment. I had screenshots, voicemails, security footage, even the Facebook post. The officer I spoke with took it seriously. "You have the right to feel safe in your own home," she told me. "If they return and try anything again, we'll escalate." It felt cold, sterile, but necessary. When I got home, I poured myself a drink, sat on the balcony, and just breathed. The next morning, I got the text I'd been waiting for. It was from my mom. "No hi, no how are you, just this. You went to the police, after everything we've done for you." I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, another message. "We were just trying to help Jason. You turned this into something ugly. And then the kicker, you've changed Carter. You're not the son we raised." She was right about one thing. I had changed. The next week was quiet. Suspiciously quiet. No knocks, no messages. Just silence. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally realized I was serious, until Friday. I got home from work and found something taped to my front door. A handwritten letter. Not in an envelope, just taped there like a flyer. I pulled it down, scanned the messy handwriting, and instantly recognized Jason's frantic scrawl. The letter was 5 pages long. Rambling, desperate, accusatory. He blamed me for everything from his failed relationships to his unemployment. He said I had abandoned my blood and let money change me. He even accused me of brainwashing our parents as if I'd turned them against him instead of just refusing to play along. He ended it with a warning. "You think you're better than everyone, but you'll be alone in the end. And when that happens, don't come crawling back to us." I crumpled the pages and tossed them in the trash. Then I called my landlord. We had a long talk, and by the end of it, I'd made the hardest decision yet. I was moving, not out of fear, out of freedom. I'd spent too long fighting for peace in a place that no longer felt safe. Every corner of that apartment held echoes of tension, of threats, knocks, late-night texts. I needed a clean slate. Within a week, I found a new place across town. Smaller, quieter, farther from my parents' reach. I didn't tell them. The day I moved, Marcus showed up to help with boxes. We packed fast, efficient, no music, no small talk, just purpose. At one point, he paused and asked me, "You sure this is what you want?" I nodded. "I'm not running away. I'm just done standing still." That night in my new apartment, I sat on the floor eating takeout surrounded by unopened boxes. And for the first time in a long time, I felt calm. But I also felt something else. Sadness. Because as much as I hated how things had gone, they were still my family. And part of me had always hoped they'd change. That one day they'd say, "We were wrong. You were right to set those boundaries." But people don't change because you want them to. They change because they have to. And so far, they hadn't hit that point yet. The next morning, I woke up to 42 missed calls. All from my dad. Something was wrong. 42 missed calls. That number didn't even make sense. It wasn't like I'd ignored my dad for a week. It had all come through overnight. I stared at my phone in silence, the screen still glowing with that number. Then came the text. "It's Jason. Call me." I sat on the edge of my new bed, rubbing the back of my neck. There was a tightness in my chest I hadn't felt in a while. Not guilt, not fear, just a knot of old reflexes I thought I'd unlearned. I didn't want to call back. I didn't want to open that door again. But I did. He picked up on the first ring, Carter. "Yeah," I said cautiously. "What's going on?" There was a pause. Then his voice came through thin, tired. "Jason's in the hospital." I sat upright. "What?" He collapsed. "Dehydration. Stress," they said. His heart rate was abnormal when they brought him in. I didn't know who else to call. For a second, I said nothing. Because here's the thing about families like mine, when they tell you something serious, your first instinct isn't concern. It's suspicion. But this didn't feel like manipulation. Not this time. "Is he okay?" I asked. "They're keeping him for observation. We're at Memorial West, room 208. The old version of me would have jumped in the car immediately. The fixer, the problem solver. But the new me, he needed a second. "Why are you calling me Dad, really?" Another pause. "Because he asked for you." I didn't expect that. I drove to the hospital in silence. No music, just thoughts. Too many of them. When I got to the room, Jason was lying on the bed, hooked up to an IV. His skin looked pale. The usual spark of ego and sarcasm was gone. He turned his head when I walked in. "Hey." I stood at the foot of the bed, unsure what to do. "You really know how to get attention, huh?" He actually laughed, just a little. Guess I still got it. A long silence passed. I walked over to the window, hands in my pockets. "So, what happened?" Jason exhaled. "I've been staying with some guy Mom knows, in his garage. I haven't really been eating right. I didn't sleep for like 2 days straight. One second, I was walking to the store, next thing I know, I'm on the ground. That's not a great survival plan." "No kidding." Another silence. I expected him to ask to move in again. To say this whole thing had been a wake-up call, and now he was serious about turning his life around. But he didn't. Instead, he said, "You didn't deserve what we did to you." I turned. "What?" He looked at me, eyes glassy. "All of it. Pushing you, making you responsible, acting like you owed us something just because you had your life together. That was never fair. And I knew it. I just didn't care because it was easier to let you carry it." I didn't know what to say. This wasn't the brother I knew. This wasn't the entitled freeloader who manipulated our parents like chess pieces. This was someone else. "I'm not saying sorry to get anything," he added quickly. "I'm just saying it. You deserve to hear it." That hit harder than I expected. Because even though I had waited years for an apology, I never actually thought I'd get one. Jason closed his eyes. "You were right to cut us off. I don't blame you. I'd have done the same thing." The air felt heavy in the room. "I moved," I said, finally breaking the silence. "Got a new place. Quiet. No one knows where it is." He nodded slowly. "Smart." I stepped back toward the door. "You're gonna be all right?" He gave a small shrug. "Physically, yeah. Mentally, still figuring that part out." I nodded once. "Take care of yourself, Jason." And then I left. No dramatic goodbye. No emotional hug. Just a quiet ending to a conversation I never thought we'd have. Outside, my parents were sitting in the waiting area. My mom stood up immediately when she saw me. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice small. I looked at her and didn't say anything for a moment. Then, this doesn't mean I'm coming back. She nodded. I know. We're not okay, I added. Not yet. Maybe not ever, but I'm not heartless. I care. I just won't be used anymore. She looked down, nodding again. My dad didn't say anything at all. I walked past them without another word. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about Jason, about everything he said. Was he really changing, or was this just another cycle? I didn't know. And I wasn't going to hang my peace of mind on the answer. The next few days were quiet. No calls, no texts, no knocks on the door. For the first time in years, it felt like the storm had passed. Then came the letter, mailed, handwritten, from my mother. It started with Dear Carter and ended with something I never expected. I still don't understand your boundaries, but I'm beginning to accept them. Maybe that's the first step. There was no manipulation, no guilt, just honesty. It wasn't a reconciliation, but it was something. A crack in the wall, a seed in dry soil. I folded the letter and tucked it away in a drawer. I wasn't ready to reply. Maybe I never would be. But for the first time, it felt like they were starting to see me, not the fixer, not the backup plan, but me. And that was enough. For now. It's strange how peace can feel like silence after a fire. You don't trust it. You wait for the crackle, the smoke, the heat. But days passed, then a week, then 2, and the fire didn't come back. I was still unpacking boxes in the new place, still learning how to live without waiting for a crisis. I'd started waking up without dread, going to bed, without bracing for a text from my mom or a "can I crash with you" from Jason. Therapy helped. A lot. I finally booked those sessions I'd been putting off for years. My therapist, Dr. Levin, didn't say much at first, but during our 3rd session, she looked at me and said, "Carter, do you realize you've been raised to believe that love equals sacrifice?" That sentence stayed with me, because it was true. For most of my life, the only way my family knew how to show love was through obligation. They gave with strings. They asked with guilt. And I responded by giving more than I had, but not anymore. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't even angry. I was just tired and ready to start living for myself. Then on a random Tuesday, Jason called. I stared at the screen for a long time. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Hey," I said. "Hey," he replied, his voice calm. "Got a second?" I hesitated. "Yeah. I just wanted to let you know. I found a job. It's not amazing, just working at a print shop part-time, but it's something." I leaned back into my chair. "That's great, man. Seriously," he continued. "I'm also seeing a counselor, one of the hospital referrals. I go once a week." "That's good to hear." "I'm not calling to ask for anything," he added quickly. "I just wanted to tell you. I'm trying." That meant more than I expected. Even though I wasn't going to let my guard down overnight, hearing him take accountability without a favor attached felt like progress. We talked for another few minutes. Nothing deep, just human. After we hung up, I sat with that feeling for a while. Not hope, not closure, just a cautious kind of acceptance. Like maybe we were finally walking in different directions, but without trying to drag each other back. That weekend, Marcus invited me over for a game night. A few old friends, nothing serious. It was the first time in years I said yes without hesitation. I was sitting on his balcony with a drink when he asked, "You ever think you'll reconnect with them fully? I paused. "I don't know," I admitted. "If it happens, it'll be on new terms, not theirs." He nodded. "Fair." And then because life has a messed up sense of timing, I got another call the next morning. It was my mom. I let it ring. Then she texted, "We need to talk, please. It's not about Jason." I debated ignoring it, but something told me to call back. She answered right away. "Carter, hi." I didn't respond. She sighed. "It's your Aunt Denise. She passed away last night." I sat up. "What?" "She had a stroke. Massive. It was quick. She didn't suffer." Aunt Denise wasn't close family, technically, my mom's cousin, but she was the only one who ever treated me like I was more than a utility. When I graduated, she gave me a card with a handwritten letter that said, "Be who you are, even if it makes the rest of us uncomfortable." I'd kept it for years. Her funeral Saturday, my mom continued. "In Golden Valley. The family will be there. I know you've been distant, but I thought you should know." I didn't say anything for a moment. "Thank you," I said eventually. She added, Jason said he's going. I won't ask you to talk to him. Or us. Just come for Denise. It was the first request in years that didn't feel like a trap. That Saturday, I drove out to Golden Valley alone. The church was small. Old wood benches. A cross above the altar that caught the sunlight just right. I saw Jason across the room sitting near the front. He gave me a small nod. I returned it. No words. My parents were there too. My mom looked surprised to see me. My dad didn't meet my eyes. After the service, there was a small reception. People talking in hushed tones, hugs, tears, laughter where it felt appropriate. I stood near the edge of the room, letting the moment breathe. I wasn't here to reconnect. I wasn't here for some dramatic reunion. I was just here for Denise. But that's when my mom walked up to me. Carter, she said softly. Thank you for coming. It meant a lot. I nodded. She looked older. Not just tired, fragile, in a way I hadn't noticed before. I know I've said things that hurt you, she said, eyes locked on mine. I won't make excuses, but I hope one day you'll believe me when I say I want better for all of us. I didn't respond right away. I believe you want something better, I said finally. But it has to include respecting who I am now, not just who you want me to be. She blinked fast. I'm trying to understand that. I really am. We stood there for a while. No dramatic hug, no big moment, just presence. Jason walked over eventually. Hey, thanks for showing up. I didn't come for you, I replied. I know, he said. Still. It matters. Then he reached out. Not for a hug, just a handshake. It was the first time in years I took his hand and didn't feel resentment. We said goodbye. I drove home alone. Quiet. At peace. I knew better than to expect everything to be healed. But for the first time, I saw signs of something I never thought I'd feel again with them. Respect. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was real. It's been 5 months since Aunt Denise's funeral. 5 months since I stood in that old church and shook Jason's hand. Since I looked my mom in the eye and told her who I really was. Since I left the past behind, not erased, but finally understood. A lot has happened since then. Jason's still working at the print shop. Part-time, but stable. He hasn't asked me for a single thing. Not money, not help, not space. Every once in a while, he'll text me something random, a meme, a photo of his cat, a question about a podcast we both listen to. Nothing heavy, just human. It's weird how low the bar is for decency when you come from a family where basic respect used to be optional. And yet those small moments, they matter more than any dramatic apology ever could. My mom sends the occasional email now. Not emotional novels or guilt bombs, just updates. A recipe she thought I'd like. A photo from her garden. She's learning slowly that access to my life isn't guaranteed anymore. It's earned. And she's earning it. My dad still keeps his distance. He was always the quiet one, the line tour, the peacekeeper who never kept any actual peace. But even he sent me a birthday card this year. No check inside. No guilt trip, just, hope you're doing okay. It was awkward, clumsy. Hunsy but real. That's the word I keep coming back to. Real. Not perfect, not fixed, just honest. And in a way that's better than anything I ever hoped for. As for me, I've never been more stable. The new apartment feels like mine now. The walls don't echo anymore. I painted them last month, soft gray with a deep blue accent wall in the bedroom. I bought new furniture not because I needed it, but because I wanted things that felt like me. No more hand-me-downs. No more just making do. For the first time in my adult life, everything around me is a choice, not a compromise. My job's still demanding, but I've started using my PTO. I joined a community yoga class on Saturdays. I spend more time outside, more time with people who don't see me as a support beam, but as a full person. Last weekend, Marcus came over and we grilled on the tiny patio. Midway through a beer, he looked at me and said, "You seem different, lighter." I laughed. I think I just stopped trying to carry people who were never willing to walk on their own. He raised his bottle. To boundaries. To boundaries, I agreed. But that night, lying in bed, I realized something else. I hadn't just set boundaries. I had rewritten my entire role in the family play. I stepped off the stage, tore up the old script, wrote my own lines, and in doing that, I gave them a choice too. To stay in the audience or to meet me in the real world where the rules are different and respect isn't optional. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Jason will stumble again. Maybe my parents will slip back into old habits. I can't control that, but I can control this. Where I live, who I let in, how I respond when people test my limits. That's the power I wish someone had told me I had years ago. That love doesn't mean surrender. That helping someone isn't the same as saving them. That your worth doesn't rise or fall based on how much pain you're willing to absorb. Some people will never understand that, but that's okay, because now I do. If you're watching this and you're in the same spot I was, tired, used up, blamed for drawing a line, this is what I want you to know. You're not wrong. You're not cruel. You're not selfish. You're allowed to protect your peace. You're allowed to walk away from a fire even if your family lit the match. You're allowed to stop playing the role they gave you and start being the person you've always needed. That's not abandonment, that's survival. And if you're lucky, maybe one day they'll stop trying to pull you back. Maybe they'll grow, maybe not. But either way, you'll be free. And that freedom, that's where life finally begins. Story 2. I'm Ryan. And the week this whole thing started, I turned 36. Madison and I have been wed for 8 years. However, now that I think about it, I regret dating throughout our college years. I fell deeply in love when we first met during our junior year of college. She was witty, endearing, and the room's brightest light. She also had the ability to make you feel as though you were the only person who mattered. I believed I was, for a time. We were only a year out of school when we were married. And even though it wasn't always simple, I genuinely thought we had something strong. I helped her through her ambition of opening a boutique design studio, 2 unsuccessful startups, and late-night MBA study sessions. After my mother died away, I contributed a sizable portion of my estate to the discovery of this dream. I never once demanded payment from her. I gave it my all. Looking back, though, I see that I was only a character in a tale. The conclusion was already written by her. On our anniversary, it took place. Our 8th. I recall it as I had just arrived home early from work with candles and groceries in my arms. I'm going to make dinner myself. I wanted to surprise Madison this year because she used to make fun of me for not being able to cook to save my life. I thought perhaps I hadn't been paying enough attention to her because she had been acting so aloof recently. I was completely mistaken. As I was arranging the table, I heard voices coming from the balcony outside after lighting the candles in the dining room and taking the wine out of the refrigerator. She was unaware that I had returned home. They were there as I peered through the transparent drapes. Madison turned to the door with her closest friend Ashley in her hand, both of them clutching rose-colored glasses. I had no intention of listening in. Actually, I wasn't. However, I simply froze when I heard my name, Ryan. Madison let out a bit too much laughter. "He's just my backup plan, Ash," she added. "To be honest, when I'm steady, I'll depart. I'm nearly there." Their glasses clinked. I felt sick to my stomach. Not much else about the moment comes to mind. My ears are just ringing. I remained still, gazing at the table. With the candles flickering and something silently, irrevocably broken inside of me, I had set. I didn't leave all at once. I didn't go up against her. I didn't flinch at all. Until they returned inside, I just stood still. She then gave me a look as if nothing had occurred. "You're early," she replied with a smile and a cheek kiss. I informed her that supper was almost ready and gave her a forehead kiss. When I served her pasta that evening, I forced a grin on my face as I chewed slowly and watched her chuckle at something on her phone. "You have no clue," I thought as I stared at her. For some reason, hearing you made sense to me. There was no use pleading. There's no need shouting. She had decided. I simply hadn't finished mine yet. My role was flawless for the next 2 weeks. That weekend, I went her to breakfast. I listened as she discussed the new customer and asked her how the studio was going. The assistant was signed by her. She planned a networking meal and recruited someone. I expressed my pride in her to her. Even the bill for the new business card she created was covered by me, while stealthily assembling my necessities. Madison was unaware that the company account she used for her studio was in both of our names. We had decided to do this early on so that I could co-sign the lease for her business space when she was unable to do it on her own. The condo where we resided was still theoretically mine as well. In her will, my mother bequeathed it to me. However, I had led Madison to believe it was ours. When she informed her friends that it was also her place, I didn't correct her. As if it were a joint asset, I didn't even dispute her when she proposed selling it to level up to something larger. I waited while I gave her the impression that she had leverage. Madison's problem is that she's cautious, even calculating. She is, however, also conceited. She believed she had time. She assumed I would continue to cover all expenses, remaining in the background. When she was ready, she could get go of the reliable spouse. However, I was now listening, as well as every small detail, mistake, and presumption she made. I contributed to my expanding mental dossier in silence. I began going to court with a lawyer. I transferred a portion of our shared assets to a trust, all documented legally above board. I stopped letting her use the business credit line. I also spoke quietly with her assistant to inform her that Madison's personal account would be used for any future paychecks and that the studio's lease would not be renewed. No conflict, no drama. Simply take quiet, slow, surgical steps. Then came the time when I realized that I was at last being noticed. Ashley sent me a message on Instagram 2 weeks after our anniversary. I never received a message from her. We weren't close, but we were polite. It simply said that she is in a panic. "What did you do?" I didn't answer. I simply gazed at it for a while. This tight knot in my chest began to relax, not because I found Madison's wriggling amusing. I'll be honest, though, there was a sinister delight in it. But because I felt like I was in charge of my own life once more, something I hadn't felt in years. I was more than simply a safety net. I wasn't an intermediary. Madison returned home from a yoga session that evening, clearly tense. She blurted out without even taking off her footwear. "Was there a problem with the business account? I believe there is a problem. I look into it in the morning." I shrugged. She looked at me as if she wasn't sure who she was speaking to. And that's when I realized she was starting to pick it up. She realized that her strategy wasn't as solid as she had assumed. That perhaps just possibly I was no longer the fallback. I didn't press, though. I simply grinned. "Don't worry," he murmured, kissing her on the cheek. "Everything is being handled." And that simply wasn't how she had anticipated. And there was even more. She simply wasn't aware of it yet. No matter how hard Madison tried to hang on to her world, the following few days seemed like seeing someone struggle to grasp water in their hands. She kept losing it in her fingers. The card declines were the first step. At first, nothing noteworthy. An Uber ride that was turned down. An unsuccessful charge at the supermarket. With a forceful chuckle, she dismissed it, blaming the bank for being strange once more. I remained silent. I simply nodded and poured her a glass of wine. The emails then arrived. In addition to recommending that she seek independent legal advice, I had our shared business accountant formally notify her of the removed co-signing powers. I didn't sign it at all. It originated with the chilly, aloof, and hard, clearly genuine. That evening, she mentioned it in her typical passive-aggressive manner. "Did you see Greg's email, sweetie? The business line has been limited," he stated, "and you need to sign a document." Her voice was breaking, but she kept stirring veggies as if nothing were wrong. I smiled calmly at her, glanced up from my laptop, and replied, "Yeah, I'm moving things around. The moment for a new framework has come. You have been expressing a desire for greater autonomy, correct?" I spoke as though it were a gift, as if I meant it. She mumbled something about having to check the studio's finances after staring at me for much too long. The following day, I discreetly and effectively transferred all shared payments to her personal account and deleted my name from her utilities. I stopped her leased car's autopay, which I had been paying for ever since she reorganized her finances. It was 6 months beforehand. Her employment at the gym ceased working that Friday. I was in a meeting when I noticed the notification on my phone. I grinned to myself as I shut off the screen. Madison didn't come right up to me. Not initially. She continued to cling to the hope that she could turn things around, that this was really a matrix malfunction rather than a reckoning. But initially, I saw the mask slowly come off. Then she suddenly began interrogating me over dinner, asking me questions. What are you currently working on? Have you been spoken with an attorney? Are you feeling angry over something? Every one of them felt more like a fishing trip than a worry. I didn't bait her. I just answered, "Everything's fine, Maddie," with a smile. She was no longer concealing her anxiousness by the second week. One evening when I got home, she was sitting on the couch with wine playing to no one, unaffected by the TV. She didn't raise her head. She questioned. "Are you going to abandon me?" It ought to have hurt. It didn't. No more. "Do you want me to?" I leaned closer and sat beside her. She turned, obviously taken aback by the inquiry. I stared at her. Bewildered, she blinked without responding. I waited 10 seconds. 15. Nothing has changed. Nothing but quiet. I responded, "I'll be in the office," as I rose up and kissed her head. "If you need anything, let me know." I transferred more data to a private folder from our shared disk that evening. Backups for everything. Financial statements and texts, emails and receipts. Madison always believed I wasn't keeping note of the promises she made, and she had a tendency of writing them down. However, I was. I had cataloged every last item. My attorney was already drafting a strategy. She would have enough money to maintain her boutique after the company withdrawal, the property exit, and the financial severance package. Seldom. No drama, no court battles, only crisp lines. I had no desire for vengeance. It created a mess. I want quiet. I desired closure. However, Ashley messaged me once more at that point. It was more than a quick, frantic SMS this time. It began with, "I'm so sorry." A few minutes later, she sent me a lengthy text message which I gazed at in shock. Madison had been discussing phasing me out for more than a year, she said. I must have been involved in some scheme. A safety net during transition. Not mine, but hers. Madison had been discreetly conversing with a venture capitalist VC who she had met at a startup event and who shown interest in both her firm and herself. She had been preparing herself emotionally, financially, and socially to leave her studio when it reached a significant milestone and she was able to completely finance herself. Her divorce had been filed. Make a clean break. Ryan won't argue with me over the condo again, so she figured she would retain it, what she said. Ashley said that the only reason she informed me was to avoid being caught up in a disaster. She was also afraid. Madison was on the verge of collapse. "She's falling apart," Ashley wrote. "She has nothing to fall back on when she believes you're about to cut the connection. I believe she is aware that you heard her that evening. Just use caution." I read it repeatedly while I sat there. Not because I didn't think it was true. Yes, I did. Now everything made sense, but I was still astonished by Madison's meticulousness. The relationship wasn't failing. I had been the target of a lengthy scam and heist. Now, however, the script was reversed. Ashley got no response from me. I also refrained from confronting Madison. Not quite yet. I wasn't finished. To transfer the condo, one more component was required. Later that night, I took out the documents. It was in the safe with me. The proof that I had paid just property taxes for the previous 6 years, the original deed, and the transfer documentation. It never bore her name. I simply never mentioned it. Not necessary, so far. I instructed my lawyer to start the procedure discreetly when I phoned him. No eviction. Just a formal notice that you're moving. I would not expel her. All I do is sell the place. A buyer had already been identified. One of my previous clients is searching our area for a private sale. We had already had coffee together. He wanted to know. Very curious. And I was anticipating a healthy profit given the state of the market. It would be finalized by the time Madison noticed. However, I was surprised by what transpired next. She phoned me 3 times in a row the next day while I was at work. I didn't answer. Then the texts arrived. "Are you able to return home? It's critical. Ryan, please." A letter arrived just now. "Is the unit up for sale?" I didn't answer. When I entered that evening, her hands were trembling a little as she stood in the entryway, her face pallid. "You are? Are you trying to sell the place?" She held up my lawyer's letter and asked. "Calm, even." I gazed at her. "Indeed." She didn't speak to me yet. Her voice wavered. I cocked my head. "Why should I?" It struck her at that same instant. Struck her hard. That she wasn't playing chess, that she was never in charge. Standing on the board was her. She started to argue, but her words would not come out. And I finally shouted what I had been suppressing since the balcony in that pause, that heavy, breathless hush. "You were heard." Her knees sagged slightly. Enough to demonstrate the impact, but not enough to fall. I didn't speak louder. I didn't make fun of her. I remained still and let the truth dangle like a guillotine between us. She seemed to be trying to find the appropriate words as her mouth moved back and forth. All that emerged, however, was an uneasy wait. "Did you hear a lot?" I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Her expression, which was devoid of color, told me she understood, and my silence said it all. The rose, the balcony, the glasses clinking. I listened to it all. She moved in my direction. I was simply ranting Ryan. "Ashley is like that, you know. We make statements. We had a drink. It had no significance." Her first move was that. Reduce. Act like it was a harmless joke. A joke. A verbal blunder. But I said nothing, allowing her to delve farther. "I mean," she went on, feigning amusement, "I would never truly abandon you. I assume you are aware of it." All I felt was frustration. And my God, sometimes I get ash in my skull. "You are aware of her personality." I arched an eyebrow. "You didn't mean it then." She let out a sigh as if she had been anticipating that query. "Obviously not. My husband is you. I cherish you. You have always supported me." Slowly, I nodded. "Correct. I've always supported you." She was surprised by how hard that landed. She opened her mouth once again. Now, however, panic was beginning to set in. I wasn't buying it, she knew. Even worse, I wasn't arguing at all. Quiet disobedience also doesn't sit well with Madison. She does best in a chaotic environment. She has the ability to control talks and distort arguments. However, she starts to fall apart when she encounters silence and serene assurance. Her voice became piercing. "You're exaggerating. Ryan, this is our house. Because of one foolish thing I said while intoxicated, you're just going to discard everything." With hard, unwavering gaze, I finally met her. "No, you meant every word, so I'm discarding everything. And you had no intention of telling me." She took a step back and sneered. "That's it then. Are you just intending to sell the condo and leave? You consider yourself a hero because of that." "Being a hero is not what I desire," I remarked in a low voice. "I just do not want to be your fallback option." That sliced like a razor through the cacophony. She appeared to be about to cry for a little period. Authentic or fraudulent, I was unable to tell. I was no longer concerned. She walked away, then back again. "This is not possible. You can't. What am I meant to do?" "This address is linked to my studio lease. I have my belongings here. Nothing I said and everything I said was ever yours in the first place." She was completely stopped by that. I was the owner of the unit. The LLC had a lease on the studio. I was the owner. I even used my business license to pay for the design program on her work computer. The goal was not to discipline her. It has to do with fixing the narrative. I had been the supporting role in her fantasy world. I merely reminded her of reality. Despite her tight jaw and heavy breathing, she remained silent. Calm and quiet, I strolled by her. I could hear her pacing the living room as I made my way to the office, talking to herself, her voice rising and falling as if she were practicing the ideal monologue. But it didn't matter anymore. When I accessed my email later that night after she had gone to bed, or at least feigned to, I saw another note from Ashley. It was a screenshot this time. A few months ago, she and Madison exchanged a text message. Madison boasted that he had met someone at a convention, an actual investor. She wrote to someone who was unafraid of ambition and who shared her goal. "Ryan is sweet, but he's not a long-term play," she remarked. "I'm just holding off on jumping till I'm steady enough." For hours, the statement kept repeating in my mind. I felt hollow instead than angry, like if something had already packed up and moved out of my body. The next morning, I sent my lawyer the screenshot. Madison made another attempt. Sitting across from me as if we were still married, she prepared breakfast using that cozy sweater I adored. She presented a fresh concept for her studio that we could develop together. I finished my eggs, gave a courteous nod, and excused myself. She trailed me into the corridor. "You're not even considering me, Ryan." I spun around and gave her a direct look. "You had opportunities for 8 years already." For the remainder of the day, that was the only thing I spoke to her. A message was affixed on the unit door that night. A final date for the purchasers was sealed by the official. Tore it off as I walked across Madison. Slammed the door after storming inside the bedroom. I didn't pay attention. I didn't provide consolation. Since I wasn't in our bed that night, I didn't explain. I felt something I hadn't felt in years when I slept in the guest room. Calm. However, the storm had only barely begun. My lawyer contacted 3 days later with a surprising message. Something that altered the pace of everything and increased the danger of my plan's next move. I was at work on a Wednesday afternoon when I received the call. Daniel, my lawyer, wasted no time in polite conversation. He had always been straightforward, which is precisely why I had picked him. He spoke in a steady but attentive tone, the tone of speech used when someone is carrying a loaded chess piece. "Everything has been reviewed," he stated. "Additionally, you should be aware of something." I felt the burden already settling in my chest as I shut the door to my office. "Proceed. Madison's firm has a secondary line of credit linked to your name. About 7 months ago, a big one opened. She has also fallen behind on it." I blinked. "What?" He went on. "Although you officially co-signed for the company account, she expanded it without your express agreement, and it was opened using your login credentials. You might still be held responsible by the bank." My breath caught. "What is the amount?" He hesitated to make a point. "Almost $84,000. I reclined in my chair in disbelief. I had anticipated deceit, manipulation, and treachery. However, this was deception. Under the same home as me, she had accrued debt, falsified documents, and used my identity. Like ice and fire clashing in my chest, I experienced an odd concoction of anger and numbness. "What choices do I have?" I inquired. "We can pursue a fraud claim and submit a legal dispute if we move quickly. However, I would suggest against pursuing it in a criminal court. Not yet, anyhow. There's another option. We can negotiate a complete release of your liabilities and include it in the asset split agreement in the divorce if we can demonstrate purpose." It was there. The last word. Separation. I had not spoken it out loud, not even to me. It didn't seem like failure, though, until hearing it today. It was like to a door opening. I didn't get any sleep that night. I shut the door to the guest room and remained up. The papers appeared on my laptop, including emails she had forged, digital signatures she had made using an old PDF of my initials, and every line she had signed in my name. She had not just spoken a falsehood. She had created a whole shadow. The foundation is how I refer to my life. The following morning, I got up earlier than normal. I brewed coffee, waited while seated at the kitchen table. Madison froze at the sight of me as she emerged in her robe, wiping sleep from her eyes. Perhaps it was the expression on my face. The thick manila folder in front of me may have been the cause. She remained silent. She took a leisurely seat. "What is that?" Her voice was quiet as she requested. The packet was moved across the table by me. After some hesitation, she opened it. By the third page, her face had gone pale. Her mouth parted, then shut again. Fear spread like wildfire across her face as she gazed up at me. "You looked through my files." she said in a whisper. No, I said. Without notifying me, you opened a line of credit using my identity. That is deception, Madison. She began to shake her head. No, I didn't. I mean, I already had your information on file, and I assumed you didn't want me to know. Like you, I cut in. I assumed I would continue to cover your expenses. Just as you anticipated, I would disappear into the background while you prepared your next move. Please, Ryan, she pleaded as she abruptly sprang up, her robe falling off one shoulder. This is something we can resolve. I intended to repay it. The company just went through a difficult time. Don't. Standing to, I stated firmly. Don't make fun of us both. You had no intention of repaying it. You intended to depart. She stopped, gasping for air, her eyes glazed. I said, I didn't intend for it to go this far, but it did. And I'm finished. After taking the folder and putting it under my arm, I turned to walk out of the room. Barefoot and now begging, she followed me to the hallway. Hold on, Ryan. Just listen, please. I was overpowered. I was wrong. I went around again. I gave her a direct look and spoke the words I had been suppressing for weeks. There was no error on your part. You made a decision. For a moment, I thought I glimpsed regret as her face crumbled. Real or not, however, it no longer mattered. I went into my office, shut the door, and gave Daniel a call. I want to go on. I said, complete separation, not even mediation. We go public if she wants to fight it. He let out a sigh as if he had been anticipating this. I'll write the draft. That Friday, the divorce papers were served. Madison remained silent. She didn't act out. She simply became silent. The sort of silence that descends upon a space like a storm cloud before the roar. I told her to leave the condo in 30 days. I gave her permission to retain the car, the studio equipment, and the furnishings. However, before I gave her the keys, I made sure the lease was changed to her name. I had no desire for vengeance. Clean breaks were what I want. She didn't finally break until the move-out date. With just one bag and a final entreaty in her voice, she stood in the hallway. Will you really allow this to happen this way, Ryan? I gave her a glance. Genuinely gave her one final glance. The lady I had loved so much, and who I had once imagined I would spend my old age with. I gave up parts of who I was to please her. I responded, This concludes the night you called me your backup plan. She bit her lip and flinched. Despite having red eyes, she refrained from crying. When things didn't work out for Madison, she never sobbed. I didn't embrace him. I didn't bid them farewell. I just moved aside and opened a door. She left. The unit sold for far more than the asking price 3 months later. I used the profit to buy a house that I had had my eye on for years. A peaceful lakeside cottage just outside the city. You could breathe there without having to fake, where the quiet wasn't oppressive. Daniel took care of the last documents. The divorce was not contested by Madison. She was aware of her defeat. She left my life like a storm that had passed, taking the settlement that was smaller than she had anticipated. Ashley contacted me once again. Just a little note. She is now concentrating on herself because she lives in a 1-bedroom apartment close to her studio. Well done. Personally, I didn't jump right in. Many evenings were spent watching the sun set behind the woods while sipping coffee on the cabin's back porch. I had not painted since college, so I began up again. I traveled alone and spoke with my sister more, re-established contact with former acquaintances, true companions, individuals who considered me more than a stepping stone, even late at night on occasion. I remember that anniversary. She assumed I was the fallback option, so I would grin while the glasses clinked on that balcony. However, I was the escape plan, so I made sure the door didn't just shut behind her. I permanently locked it. Story 3. Nathan is my name. I'm 41 years old, and I used to think that people would support you if you put in a lot of effort, remained faithful, and looked after your family. It was no longer a belief. As soon as I noticed my birthday cake's wording. Let me begin from the beginning, though. when I still believed in the importance of the small things. I'm not ostentatious. Not at all. I operate a logistics warehouse, get up at 6, make my own coffee, travel 45 minutes to work, and get home at 6:30. I've been doing that routine for over 20 years. Made an early mortgage payment. Never skipped an event in school. Everything was fixed, even leaking pipes, and my 16-year-old son Ethan's first sorrow. Praise was not what I expected. That simple effort just seemed to signify something to me. Rachel, my wife, used to be my strongest supporter. Or perhaps I simply remember it that way. It was at college when we first met. I was the quiet guy in the back who usually arrived early and took notes for everyone, and she had a spark. She expressed her admiration for my dependability. That trustworthy label gradually began to sound more like dull. Nevertheless, until last year's birthday, I believed we were doing okay. I didn't mind that my birthdays were always quiet. Usually, I would receive a handmade dinner, a card, and sometimes a garment I didn't choose. However, they organized a celebration this year. Ethan came up with it all. They say I got home to a half-hearted banner that said, "Happy birthday, Nate," a bunch of store-bought goodies thrown into mismatched bowls and balloons glued clumsily to the ceiling fan, as though I were a neighbor they hardly knew. I grinned anyway, remained calm and collected. Rachel dragged me to the cake on the dining table. Fudge with chocolate, my fave. However, this one didn't say anything even close to usual, like, "We love you," or "Happy birthday." In thick, awkward crimson icing, it said, "Well done on your mediocrity." I initially believed it to be a joke. Some folks enjoy dark, sardonic comedy, you know. Ethan then put out his phone to record my response. Rachel chuckled. "Go on, it's amusing. You claim to be merely average all the time." I didn't say that, not once. But like they were making fun of me in a comedy club, they yelled and hooted as they went with it. I smiled because I had to, not because I felt fine. Like a corporate mascot, I blew out the candles and posed for photos. After everyone had gone over to the living room to browse through their phones, they discreetly began tidying up. Nobody volunteered to assist. Not even Ethan. Silently, I cleaned their dishes, packed up half-eaten chips, and scraped dry icing off the table. As Rachel rewatched the video, the only sound was the laughter coming from her phone in the distance, laughing as if it were a prime-time show. No one took attention. For the remainder of the evening, I remained silent. The next days passed quickly. I refrained from arguing or confronting. I simply observed and watched, as if I were taking stock of my own existence from outside. Rachel had not worked for more than 6 years, yet she still bought as if we had an endless supply of money, I noted. How Ethan had a brand new laptop, a gaming chair, and enough money in his allowance to purchase for a car. How I unquestioningly paid every bill, subscription, and small extravagance. They had begun to treat me like furniture, even though I had been the silent engine that kept the whole thing operating. Trustworthy, not moving. I checked our joint accounts on Monday, taking it for granted. 3 were among us. 1 check, 2 savings. I opened each one. I gazed at the figures. I continued to gaze at the spending history after that. That week alone, Rachel had spent more than $900 on skin serums, candles, strange items from Etsy, and another subscription box for self-care. Ethan had spent $300 on microtransactions in video games. Month after month, year after year, I tracked it all down. Like a freight train, it struck me. I came up with a strategy since I was paying for a lifestyle that didn't have room for me. I didn't yell or become angry. I just got to work getting ready. In my name alone, I created a secret checking account. My paycheck was redirected. On the opposite side of town, I submitted an application for a tiny storage unit. I started compiling my social security card and other relevant documents, such as birth certificates, passports. I would take a stroll every night, but in reality, I was removing boxes of personal belongings from the house one at a time. Rachel never showed any interest in the old pictures, tools, and even some treasures that belonged to my dad. Nobody took attention. They were too preoccupied with the life I had purchased. I also ceased making little silent payments. Rachel's membership at the gym was terminated. Netflix for Ethan. Spotify PSN is no longer available. Even the internet was lowered by me. Rachel inquired as to why the speed was slow. It must be the router. I shrugged. They complained, but did not insist. I suppose you don't realize when someone is truly disappearing when you treat them like a ghost. The joint account was the last item. I had just enough money left over to maintain appearances, but on a Tuesday morning, I made a reservation for a short-term property using my new account, signed the lease, and verified the last salary transfer. I waited until Ethan was in school and Rachel had departed for her monthly brunch. I then totally depleted the joint account. Everything, every penny goes to me. I removed myself from all shared apps an hour later. I deleted my login from all smart home devices and disabled the family credit cards. Once, twice, and then continuously my phone buzzed. All 37 of the missed calls were from Rachel. Texts and voicemails, one after the other. "Nathan, what did you do? Give me a call immediately." Everything. Then followed the chains of question marks, the assault of all capitals. And lastly, the video call that I allowed to ring when I was sitting in peace and quiet in the kitchen of my rental drinking coffee from a broken mug I had brought from home. And at last, silence. However, the dramatic element wasn't even that. Rachel hadn't seen what was about to happen, therefore not yet. By the time I reached voicemail number 12, Rachel had completely lost what little peace she still had. In one of the messages, she shook her voice and said, "You have no idea what you've done." Out of rage, not grief. "Nathan, you've wrecked everything. Tomorrow my bills will be arriving. How should I proceed?" I paused at that one. Ruined everything. "No, let's have a conversation." "No, you left, but why?" Not even the slightest bit of worry for me. The man she just publicly humiliated in front of his own kid by calling him mediocre with a cake. No, it was about her comfort being challenged and her way of life collapsing. She didn't ever fear losing me. While being made fun of in his own house, she feared losing the guy who had paid for everything. Ethan texted me later that evening. "Dad, Mom is going crazy. What's happening?" I gazed at it. When the cake joke hit me like a smack across the face, Ethan, who hadn't even looked at me on my birthday and who thought it was amusing to video me, didn't offer to help me clean. He probably texted me for the first time without requesting money. I typed something, erased it, paused to reflect, and then wrote again. "Inquire with her." There was nothing more I said. I wanted him to reflect. Instead of simply repeating whatever Rachel was saying, I wanted him to pose meaningful questions. However, I suspected I knew how this would turn out. Mike from work, a mutual acquaintance who knew Rachel and me, contacted the next day. Out of curiosity, I listened it even though I let it go to voicemail. "I don't know what's going on, but Rachel arrived at work this morning. You abandoned your family and emptied the accounts," she said, sobbing. "I just wanted to say hello. Are you all right?" It nearly made me chuckle. Left behind. I didn't leave them behind. I simply no longer hold their money hostage. I checked the joint email that we still nominally shared a few hours later. Thank heavens I hadn't removed myself from it yet. Rachel was messaging attorneys already. One with the subject line, "Urgent Spouse Financial Abuse," caught my attention. I made the click. Go through it. I slightly clenched my hands. The falsehoods flowed out like poison, not because I was terrified. His past includes financial dominance, emotional neglect, and denying others access to common resources. According to the victim, she painted herself. I was in charge of the money and was the manipulator. The 5-figure credit card was not mentioned. My name was jacked up by her. Not to mention the $1,000 handbag, the unlimited breakfasts, or the spa getaways. She never expressed gratitude to me for funding her mortgage, groceries, and utilities on her own for 17 years while pursuing her goals, and she never once brought in a fragrance. I spent some time looking at the screen. I swallowed the rage that attempted to go up my throat. Her game was that. Manipulation of emotions. smear campaigns, victimization. I wouldn't participate. Rather, I printed all of the records and transactions over the previous 2 years, made a digital folder with all of the bank statements, receipts, and charges. She titled it Evidence of Household Contributions and marked any unnecessary purchases with her name. After that, I included my W-2 tax records evidence that I had paid my whole mortgage with my own money and a few images of her birthday cake joke that had been shared on Facebook with the comment, LOL. My spouse is aware that he is only average. That was public indeed. A week prior to the party, I had discreetly engaged an attorney and delivered everything to him. I had no intention of running. I was going to burn this down the legal way, but I wasn't going to hide. No drama, no shouting, just methodical, steady exposure. Rachel sent more than 80 SMS by the weekend, some begging and some apologizing. Most of them are furious. How could you degrade me in this way once stated I had nothing when you left me? I answered that one. Years ago, you left me nothing. Finally, I caught up. Quiet. I sat in the rental apartment's little kitchen till the next day. In that silent, golden manner, the light was peeking through the blinds. Only in the late afternoon does it. There came a knock when I was drinking tea. Not the door. I turned to the window. Rachel was unkempt with red hair and eyes as if she hadn't slept. I should open it, she said. I carefully got to my feet, keeping my distance. Through the glass, she shouted, "Everything will be ruined by you." I cocked my head, calmly answered, "You did it already." It appeared as though she may toss something. "Do you wish to ruin this family's day over a cake?" Everything clicked because of that one egotistical, ignorant line. She was still unable to grasp it. The cake wasn't it. Through the window, I said, it was what before and what did not follow. Show respect, goodwill. Thank you. You can't make fun of someone and expect them to be loyal. Instead of a partner, you want a supplier. I just stopped submitting job applications. I closed the curtains. Her heels clacking, with each angry stomp she pounded on the window once then again and then bounded down the steps. I did not see her go. Later that night, I returned to my tea. At last, Ethan gave a call. He said quietly, "Feeling anxious, Dad?" He inquired, "Are you truly gone?" "No," I said. Simply said I'm no longer invisible. I then filled him in on everything. Not out of rage, not to make him hostile to her, just the facts. What I purchased, what she concealed, what she twisted. He remained quiet for a while. "I think I knew, but I didn't want to admit it," he added. "Yeah," I said. "You are not forced to pick between us. You must, however, open your eyes." He arrived to the rental that Sunday with a backpack and tears in his eyes, but he didn't say anything further. The big storm began at that point. Ethan was smaller than I recalled when he entered the rented flat. Not in a bodily sense. At 17, he is already taller than me and has the build of a linebacker. However, there was something about his stance. Shoulders sagged as he scurried about the little room as if unsure of his place, like a child who just found there were gaps in a safety net. Before I remarked, "You're hungry," he stood there clumsily gripping the straps of his duffel bag. He gave a nod. I had very little. Just a pot of chili I'd been nursing all week and some sandwiches I made earlier. No expensive meals, no bags of takeout strewn all over the counter. Simple cuisine prepared with silent hands. Without uttering a word, he consumed 2 bowls. Sipping water, I sat across from him and let the stillness to grow not awkward, just genuine. And perhaps it was sufficient for the first time in a long time. "Are you really not coming back?" he questioned, looking up at last. I let out a breath through my nose and reclined in my chair. Sincerely, I said, "I'm not sure yet. However, I will not return to being treated as though I am unimportant." He glanced at the table below. "She said that you punished her by emptying her account." Slowly, I shook my head. Her account was unaltered by me. Just the joint. Once I didn't succeed. The part appeared to hit him once she drained it. He scowled and then nodded but remained silent. That evening we watched a movie. When he was 10, we used to enjoy some classic comedies. Like putting on an old sweater that no longer fits, it felt odd, familiar, yet far away. But we owned it. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a release in my chest as he chuckled at the same words he used to say when he was younger. He slept on the pull-out sofa throughout his overnight visit. Early in the day, the peace was broken on my front door when I returned after driving him to school. A printed letter was sloppily taped. Just bold lettering at the top, no envelope. "This is to notify you." Rachel had requested spousal support in an emergency, claiming to have been abandoned. Financial reprisal. And I actually laughed aloud at this one. Deliberate, emotional discomfort. Her aim was to strike quickly. "You outdid me. On paper, pretend to be the victim." I was hoping that I would roll over as usual. However, I was prepared. I brought the letter inside. I forwarded it to my lawyer with the subject line after scanning it. "She is taking action." Within an hour, he made a call. He responded, "She's going scorched earth," attempting to portray this as though you simply vanished and left her and the child penniless. Ethan was with me, I informed him. A pause occurred. "That changes everything," he remarked. I filed an official response with his assistance. The bank statements, social media posts, and even an affidavit from Ethan are all included. But until it was absolutely necessary, I didn't want to pull him more into this if it came to that. Rachel sent me a fresh email that evening. No salutations. There is no punctuation. A wall of furious, irate, and hardly comprehensible words. "Do you really believe you can just steal my life, my money, and my son? You're ill. You require assistance. Your own family was being destroyed by you. For what purpose? Because jokes are too much for you. You are pitiful. It won't work out well for you." I saved it, but I didn't respond. Took a screenshot of it. Forwarded it to my attorney. Rachel arrived at Ethan's school 2 days later. I received a call from the workplace. She is requesting that he be pulled out. Whispering, as if she were afraid, the receptionist stated. "He wants to remain with you," she's shouting, he claims. I left everything behind and drove directly there. Ethan was seated in the main office when I entered. Crossed arms, firm but pale face. Rachel was pacing close to the door, fighting with the principal, who appeared to be regretting every choice she had made in her life up to that point. Rachel snarled and contorted her face when she saw me. "You are to blame for this." I ignored her and went directly to Ethan. "Are you all right?" I inquired. He gave a nod. "I'd want to accompany you back." The principal gave me a glance. Technically, he is still a minor. I acknowledged, but I still needed to complete the papers for temporary guardianship. It includes his statement. "Rachel, leap ahead. He is my son. You are not allowed to steal. In addition to the fact that you're experiencing a midlife crisis." Once more that word. She still spoke it as if I didn't exist, as if I hadn't brought him up, covered the cost of every meal lesson, knee scrape, and late-night trip to a friend's house, as if I hadn't endured music performances and math assignments while she spent whole weekends resting at yoga retreats. I gave her a serious glance before realizing that I no longer recognized the woman standing in front of me. "Your son was not lost." Silently, I said, "Your free transportation was taken away from you." Her cheeks flushed, but the principal intervened before she could strike out once again. "I suppose you'd better go, Mrs. Bennett." Turning on her heel, Rachel bounded out. For the first time in years, Ethan and I talked late into the night that night. He talked about how Rachel would make fun of my work and my habits when I wasn't around, and how she informed him that without her, I wouldn't have existed at all. He said, "You were fortunate to have her," as she used to say. However, I believe she was fortunate. I refrained from crying. I nodded and murmured, "Thanks, kid," even though I had assumed I would. After a week, there were 2. Rachel's next move came at that moment. Not in court. Through my employment. She took aim at the target. It began with an unexpected call from Human Resources. Their voice had an unusual tone. It was a more reluctant, colder version of the typical business politeness. "Nathan, are you able to enter? We have to talk to you." It concerns a grievance." My heart fell. It had been more than 15 years since I had a single write-up. From forklift operator to operations manager, I advanced through the ranks. I gave new hires training, stayed up late, took calls on the weekends. It was a location I virtually lived for. However, I realized it wasn't a work-related matter when I entered the glass conference room and found our legal liaison already sitting. A printed package was given to me. It has my name on it. Hers was too. Rachel wasn't exactly subtle, but she had submitted an anonymous report. In the most ridiculous portion, she accused me of emotionally harming coworkers by utilizing business tools to conceal money and manipulate payroll systems. It was absurd, provably untrue. However, the falsehoods weren't the issue. The reason was that she created enough commotion to have them look into it. I endured 4 hours of interrogation while defending each keystroke, all of my choices for the past 2 years. They looked through my timesheets, emails, and even the business gas card I used to pay for extra calls on the weekends. I remained calm. I felt unclean, as though I were sitting under a heat lamp with a target on my back, because I was a good man who had finally stopped allowing his family to trample all over him, even though I had nothing to conceal. I was placed on a 2-week paid administrative leave while they worked things out, but I wasn't fired. A gentle smack across the face from the corporation. Not guilty, just proximity-based guilt. The weight of all she would ruin pressed down on my chest as I left that building. She wasn't only attempting to destroy our union, she was attempting to ruin me. I sat with Ethan at the rented unit that evening. What now, he said, seeing my face. I realized it was time to cease defending at that point. Time to call it quits. I met with my lawyer the next morning and approved a complete countersuit, filing for divorce, requesting custody, and bringing a civil lawsuit for slander and willful interference with work. When I added the final sentence, he arched an eyebrow. "Are you serious?" he inquired. I gave a nod. "This has become a battle because of her. This is the first time I'm going to fight." Everything fell apart over the course of the following 6 weeks, and not for me. Rachel lost it when she was issued the papers. She made more than 30 calls in a single day, the most of which were yelling voicemails that alternated between sobs and threats. I didn't respond at all, not because I was spiteful, but more because my lawyer could hear everything she said. She attempted to play the role of the devoted mother in court by claiming that Ethan was simply confused and that I had indoctrinated him. However, the judge remained unmoved, particularly when Ethan calmly described her actions in an oath-taking testimony. The cake, the years of derision, the way she called me free labor and laughed behind my back. I could see the change in the judge's eyes, the silent disdain, even if his face hardly moved. The financial records followed. Every penny I spent, every extravagance she demanded. Weekly massages, private Pilates, imported skincare products, and personalized dog clothing are just a few of the infinite wellness costs. Over the course of 4 years, she never earned more than $80,000, while I covered the mortgage, groceries, electricity, and tuition. Her attorney attempted to change course. He said it was part of the upkeep of the house. I recall my attorney grinning in response. Since 2016, she has been unemployed. There aren't any money or other donations or documentation. The deposition served as the last straw. You see, Rachel was unaware that the week before to her phony job complaint, I had secretly taped a chat, not to apprehend her. She interrupted me mid-call as I was talking to a buddy, saying that she would make me wish I had never been born and that I would lose everything if I didn't go back to her. "I will take your job, your money, and your foolish moral superiority, and all you will have left is that depressing little flat," she added, when it was heard by the court, each haughty phrase. The case changed in her voice. On every issue, the court decided in my favor. Within the month, the divorce was formalized. Ethan was given to me in full custody, and Rachel was given supervised visits while she received treatment. Regarding the employment, I was completely cleared by the inquiry. HR even sent me a formal letter of apology, but they lacked the courage to say so in person. However, I turned down their invitation to come back. I didn't want to return to an area where her poison was allowed to persist unchecked for so long. Rather, I began a new endeavor. I spent the funds and accepted a severance. I had developed the other account in secret. She was unaware of the investment. Additionally, I invested in a little business that I had been dreaming about for years. A manager with vision and expertise was wanted by a small logistics consulting business. In decades, for the first time. Paycheck to paycheck was not my reality. Or worse, seeing others living off of my salary. Ethan received awards after graduating from high school. I assisted him with his relocation after he was admitted to a reputable institution, grinning the entire time. On social media, Rachel attempted to hide the fact that she was discovering who she was and living her truth. However, the truth had already been presented to 3 judges and documented in court filings. The mask was removed. The majority of our pals unfollowed her in private. "I always wondered how you put up with her," stated the people who contacted me, and my fave. "Never were you mediocre. All around you were folks who had no idea what amazing looked like." Now a year has passed. My flat for rent? I didn't keep it. I purchased a small home close to the lake. It's calm and serene. In the rear is a hammock that receives just enough sunlight. Ethan comes by frequently. On the weekends, we grill, laugh, discuss actual topics. With each passing day, I can feel the burden of those earlier years slipping away. And occasionally, I can still recall the cake when I look back. Not in agony, with thankfulness, not resentment. Because I woke up to that terrible insult coated in icing. The realization that I had relegated myself to a supporting role in my own life. Right now. Now that I'm writing the script, I make sure each chapter is interesting to read.